Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and today we're going to talk about Kyle Kuzma and the possibility that the LA Lakers could trade him, amongst some rumors about his own behavior as well as, just what they could potentially be looking to do with their own roster. But before we get started with the video, really quickly, if you enjoy NBA content, please consider subscribing. I upload NBA stuff basically every single day. Okay, so this whole Kyle Kuzma trade thing kind of originated, I think it was last week at this point, with it was either Kuzma's current or former trainer said some things about LeBron, about him not working hard enough, and then Kuzma had his own cryptic tweet that may or may not have been related, but essentially it just created a little bit more drama around the situation that I'm not really too worried about, to be completely honest, because I'm more here to talk about like the basketball side of this and what the Lakers should be doing with their roster and whether a Kuzma trade is something that they should be considering. And the reason that this has come up in a more concrete way is because there was a report recently by The Athletic that said that the Lakers are now willing to listen to offers for Kuzma, whereas in the past, I guess they were kind of, pushing that idea to the side because they liked the idea of having a future piece on their team. Kuzma's obviously one of the only pieces that didn't get moved in the Anthony Davis trade, or at least pieces of real value that aren't, LeBron and things like that. And so there's always been this idea that if they were going to make a move at some point this year, that Kuzma would be the guy involved in it. And as I said, he's kind of the only guy left from the Anthony Davis trade, but interestingly, they haven't really had to rely on him too much to have such a strong start, because as a lot of people thought, the success of this Lakers team has been completely propelled by the success of LeBron and AD and that combination, and they've had other guys and role players step up, whether it be Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Alex Caruso, whoever it is on this roster. They've had guys step up to the point that Kuzma is definitely helpful. He's a good bench scorer, but he's not someone that they've really had to rely on all that much, which makes you think that maybe if there's a move to be made here, he's the guy to move. And it's not that he hasn't played well, it's just, I'd say it's definitely been disappointing from a statistical standpoint, especially in terms of his efficiency. He's scoring about 12 points per game off the bench, but not in a super efficient way. And he's had his moments. He had a really good first half on Christmas Day, scoring over 20 points in the first half because he just started really knocking down shots. But he's not a player that I'm all that confident is going to play all that well in the postseason. And I think it's a definite possibility that they get into a really tough 7-game series and Kuzma kind of disappears just because of a lack of playoff experience and just how up and down his game can be and how inconsistent he can be at times, which makes me think that maybe it would make sense to move him for another guy that that you can at least count on when it counts in the postseason. And so in my opinion, the base answer to this question off the bat is yes, they should definitely consider trading Kuzma for a veteran two-way player, someone that can knock down shots, someone that can defend. Ideally, a player on the wing, as Kuzma is a bit more of like a front court scorer type player, maybe a little bit more of a wing defender, shooter type guy off the ball would be a good move for this Lakers team. But the real question here isn't necessarily should they trade him, because again, I think that if there's a good move to be made, then they should definitely capitalize on how well they're playing right now. They've got, not very many years left of really good LeBron, so they should definitely try and cash in on Kuzma's value for a veteran player if they find a deal that they like. But it's more so about how much value does he actually have, because he's 24 years old, which isn't old by any means, but he's older than maybe you think that he would be, with this only being his third year in the league. And he's got one more year left on his contract after this season, and then they're going to have to, or whoever trades for him is going to have to pay him. And so I'm not certain that, given that as well as his play on the court, some of the inconsistencies, I'm not sure that he really has a ton of value to be getting a hugely impactful player, which adds another layer to this question of whether or not they should trade him. And I'm sure there is some potential there, and I'm sure there's some teams around the league that would like to have Kyle Kuzma, but in terms of his ceiling, I'm not sure that he's going to get all that much better than he is right now, and he's just going to continue to be a nice, solid bench, maybe fringe starter, front court scorer, and I'm just not sure how much value there is out there for him, especially considering that given his age and his potential, he could, demand a relatively significant deal in free agency in 2021 if it gets that far and he does not sign an extension. So there's a lot of things to consider here in terms of how much value this guy actually has. And so the answer to this question at the end of the day in terms of should they trade him really comes down to what you think they can get back for him, because he's not a young star as he's been termed in a couple of reports. He's just, a nice, solid young player. And I'm sure I'll do a trade machine video on him later this week as well, kind of talking about more specific deals. But in my mind, in terms of value, in terms of compensation and return for him, I mean, you're probably looking at like maybe Jay Crowder. This is a Memphis team that's been playing better lately, but is still planning towards the future. And so if you did like, a Jay Crowder for Quinn Cook and Kyle Kuzma trade, would that be something that would interest Memphis? Jay Crowder would be a nice piece for the Lakers. Him and LeBron have played together in the past in Cleveland. Their relationship might not be great, but that's kind of where I'm looking as potential pieces. This would, be a nice move in terms of a veteran on a championship team, for a potential championship contending team, I should say, in Jay Crowder and the Lakers. And then, like I said, the Memphis Grizzlies are getting back kind of another young piece potentially for this team moving forward. That's kind of the deals that I would be looking at, in my opinion, just given all the other circumstances around Kuzma's value. But then you also have to consider, like, if that's the case and you're really only getting like Jay Crowder type players, is it even worth it for the Lakers to move him at this point, even given their own situation with they're trying to push for the playoffs and they want to capitalize on, LeBron and AD being as good as they are? Is it even worth it to give up a player that does have future value in exchange for someone like Jay Crowder at this point? And so at the end of the day, I don't really think he's going to end up being moved. It's one of those situations where I think people want him to be traded. And again, if there was a move to be made for this Lakers team, it's probably going to involve Kuzma, but it just doesn't seem to be a lot of value out there for him. And this is a team that's playing extremely well, and it doesn't really make sense to rock the boat in terms of their rotations and things like that. They're going to be a candidate for plenty of buyout players around the league as we get closer to the buyout deadline. And then Darren Collison could potentially be joining this team as well. They're going to find plenty of ways to improve along the margins that I don't necessarily think that a Kuzma trade would be in play for them. Now, that could definitely change, and things can certainly get more dramatic around this Lakers team. And if some other things come out about him, maybe they're a little bit more motivated to move him, or maybe I'm completely undervaluing him and you guys think that there's better trades out there for him than just like a Jay Crowder type move. And again, we'll talk about those in a trade machine, I'm sure, later this week. But for me right now, if I was the Lakers, if that's the kind of value that I'm getting back, I probably wouldn't trade him. And I don't necessarily think that he's going to either. Now, if you want to go the other direction here and say, no, I think he's going to be traded or they should trade him, in terms of situations that would allow for that to be possible, you have to consider teams that are looking to add younger pieces around the league and have veteran players that the Lakers could potentially be interested in. That's why Memphis comes to mind. Potentially a team like the Chicago Bulls would come to mind. There are teams around the league that have, scenarios that they could potentially look at trading for Kuzma, but you also have to consider the fact that the Lakers really don't have, a lot of contracts to put together to match very much salary. Like even the Jay Crowder thing, like you have to add in Quinn Cook there to make the salaries work. Like they have to be pretty low salary players that they're trading for in exchange for Kuzma. So you definitely have to consider that as well. So when you look around the league, like I said, potentially the Bulls, but they don't really have kind of like a mid salary level guy that they could potentially, be looking to trade away. Maybe Orlando has a player that they would like to trade away that could interest the Lakers at some point. But in my opinion, it is kind of tough, because at this point in the year, with the way the 8th seed races are in both conferences, even teams that have really bad records still have playoff hopes. And so they might not be looking to ship off a veteran at this point in the season. And so it's going to be kind of difficult to find teams around the league that are willing to, move on from a veteran and play a little bit more of the long game and trade for Kuzma in exchange for, whatever veteran player they have on the roster. Like we saw the Jordan Clarkson, Dante Exum thing. The Cavs know they're not going to make the playoffs, but there's not that many teams around the league that are in that kind of situation, because I think that would kind of be the type of deal that we would see here. Obviously, Kuzma's had a better career to this point than Dante Exum has, but I would think along those lines with a slightly higher threshold of value for on each side of the deal than what those two players bring to the table. But something similar to that. But again, you have to find those lower salaries that the Lakers would be able to match with Kuzma plus one of their guys. It also is kind of weird because the Lakers have multiple players on their roster that have no trade clauses that make it, a little bit more difficult as well. So at the end of the day, again, I don't think this is going to happen, but those are kind of the check boxes that you need to fill if you're looking at Kyle Kuzma trades. A young team that would want to trade for another younger piece in Kyle Kuzma that has a veteran that the Lakers would be interested in. Again, ideally a wing that can defend and can shoot and doesn't make very much money because the Lakers don't have a ton of salaries to match. So there's a lot of things to consider here and a lot of things to take a look at and make sure that you're checking off in a potential Kyle Kuzma trade, which again makes me think that it's not going to happen. As exciting as it would be to see this team change it up, and I think there are moves to be made potentially out there for them. Right now, the climate just doesn't seem to necessitate Kyle Kuzma being on the move anytime soon. But there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Like I said, we'll probably end up doing a Kyle Kuzma trade machine video later on in the week, unless some bigger news breaks and I decide to do someone else for a trade machine there. So if you have ideas for NBA trade machine, typically I take those from tweets when I send the tweet out. But if you have some for Kyle Kuzma, then be sure to leave those down in the comment section below, and I'll absolutely take a look at those as well, and maybe include those in that trade machine video, whether it's this week or down the road. But like I said, that is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.